Hello, I'm Miranda, and welcome to another Superfluous review. Today I will be reviewing White Dwarf issue number 491. And before we get started today, I wanted to ask that if you are enjoying this type of content, to please let me know by hitting the like button, subscribe if you're interested, and leave a comment with what you like about White Dwarf magazine. Okay, so on to the review. And as always on the first page, you start off with a little brief from the managing editor, Lyle Lowry. Hi, Lyle. And he's asking for feedback on what you all think of the bunker so far. This is the second issue with updates from the bunker, so if you are subscribed and have been following any of that, make sure to leave some feedback for the White Dwarf team. After the initial contact and beautiful model submissions, we jump into Andy Clark's article on the Worlds of Warhammer. So this talks about how to approach building up your collection over time. Now, we don't all have necessarily the funds, time, or whatever necessary to just have an army overnight. So this article talks about slow growing either one large army if that's your interest, or growing multiple armies and multiple factions if that is what you prefer to do. And a big focus on that is collecting gaming sets. I mean, the two-player box sets do tend to be a very popular way to collect these games, and kind of a very cost-effective way as well, especially if you can get in with a friend on it. You can also collect small box sets. Like when the Underworlds box sets come out, then you can just get small forces at a time. I think Warcry does the same. A little bit bigger scale, you can get kill team sets and build those up. And then once you have kind of a base to start from, then you can start adding additional units and things to help build out that army. And so it's just an approach on how to get there. It also talks about tips for buying terrain sets and building up terrain. Of course, in playing Warhammer, you want to make sure you have access to plenty of terrain because that is a big part of the game. And these box sets oftentimes have little sets in there to collect. And so you want to amass those and hopefully have some kind of little board that you can cobble together for you and your friend. The next segment is an update on the bunker, which if you didn't see from the last issue, the bunker is a sort of worldwide community that Warhammer has put together through White Dwarf magazine and through the online channels, so that people from all over the world, multiple gaming clubs, even people's garages, just anywhere that you have groups of gamers interested in participating, they can play specific bunker battles that are provided in each of the monthly issues. And it talks about the August challenge, which is leaders and heroes. So basically you get bonuses for taking out character models, leaders, and that can be really fun because even if you aren't winning your game, you can get extra points for taking out leaders and character models because that is part of the actual challenge for this month. Then there is a Combat Patrol League update, so that is the folks at Warhammer participating in their own Combat Patrol games and their own league, kind of as an example so that anybody else participating can see how they're doing. And then for this month's bunker challenges, there are unique missions that have also been provided. So for you 40k players out there, there is the Amidst the Maelstrom challenge, which is a specific objective that again focuses on taking out leaders and characters. And for the Age of Sigmar players, there is the Battle of the Black Skies. Now, in either case, there is a cutout, a cardboard insert that can be pulled out of the magazine that has that mission brief for each of those missions on there as well, so that it is a little more handy for you to carry around. The next article covers Warhammer Underworlds, and specifically it talks about how to develop a league play, a league for your game store or your group of players who are playing Warhammer Underworlds. And there's some fun tips and tricks in here about, say, how long to run a league, how to help underdogs catch up, how to handle people who might not be able to get in as many games as other people, giving bonuses for things like painting their army. Just some really fun stuff to help make it a very enjoyable experience for everyone who participates. And so if you do enjoy Warhammer Underworlds, this is a really fun article to check out. Then one of my new favorite articles in here, the basic training, where they actually cover specific scenarios that you can come across in your games and how to sort of think strategically about them. So in this case, they actually give a the focus is sort of on a battle plan. And so there's a battle plan analysis that they use an example mission. And so in this one, there's a scenario where there are 4 objectives. However, the objectives are not scoreable until turn 2, and they gain value depending on which side of the board it might start with. So a leftmost objective out of the 4 may gain a multi-point value, and then it'll actually pulse to the next objective over during that round. However, you don't know which side of the board that increased points value is going to start. And so it talks about how to deploy your army, how to position your stuff, depending on whether you go first or second, and being prepared for when that objective reveals itself and how to best capitalize on it. And the cool thing about these sorts of articles is it's not just specific on how to handle that one specific scenario. They are trying to demonstrate how to think about approaching the game strategically in general. So there are going to be multiple scenarios in which you will play, and the victory conditions can be different. However, if you know that something is going to be more valuable late game or mid game, you want to make sure you're positioning with that in mind, as opposed to just reacting to your opponent all the time. And so it's just a good way to help build a basic skill set, so you don't feel like you don't feel horribly disadvantaged playing these games. A lot of times war games in general can be kind of intimidating to players, especially new players. So this basic training helps to give people, I think, a bit of a foothold and a way of feeling like they have some base competency coming in. And I don't know, it's really cool. And then they actually give you a scenario at the end that's like a quiz, so you can kind of see how you might approach a laid out scenario. And then there's an answer at the back of the book that gives their suggestion on how best to handle it. The next one is the Hobby Hangout. So last issue they talked about painting up the Leviathan box set for the Tyranids. Now they are going into the Leviathan box set and painting up those Terminators. So it's a really kind of a basic paint rundown, but it's very effective. It's a way of getting your army tabletop ready very quickly. I think specifically they mentioned painting each model for about 35 minutes, not including drying time. And for getting a model done, that's pretty quick. So these guides have been pretty useful. There's a lot of leaning into the use of contrast paints. So if that's something you're already comfortable with, then you'll probably find this really interesting. And then they have some fun examples of alternative color schemes that you can use and some fun hobby hacks. And one of the interesting hobby hacks in here they mentioned was dusting off your miniatures. So if you don't always have them in a case, either a clear one or in a phone case or something, they're just maybe out on a shelf, but you want to dust them, they recommend, instead of using paintbrushes, to actually use makeup brushes. And the argument is that a paintbrush is designed to hold and pick up liquid, or pick up, wet things, whereas a makeup brush is designed more to pick up and hold powder. Then they have their satellite uplink article, which is an expansion on the bunker. It's the idea that, anybody around the world can participate in this bunker, and so the satellite uplink shows stories from different parts of the world. Jumping over to the Age of Sigmar section, there is an article on the formation and remit of the Grand Conclaves. So it is just an article describing how these people are brought to power, and a little summary of each of the individuals who run like the Grand Conclaves in this world. Then there's another peek up behind the curtains with an article from Luis Aguilar on the rules of engagement. So this specifically focuses on how the lore of the world should influence the rules of the game, because it's very important to keep those ideas connected, because you're playing in your game, you want to feel like you're in that world, and theoretically the rules of actually playing the game should reflect what the world is. And what Luis mentions in here is that when he's developing rules, there is a certain idea or a hook that should apply to the rule that makes it feel right, that makes it feel on brand or on theme and appropriate to the models using it. It's a fun example and examination about how rules and lore do go hand in hand, and how that is at least approached within the rules for Age of Sigmar. Celestial Enlightenment is a fun article that focuses on the Seraphon. So the Seraphon are these dinosaur reptiloid creatures, and the artwork for them is reflective of them being reptilian and not humanoid, and how to make them different, even though they're kind of bipedal and they ride animals, and by rights they're very anthropomorphic, but how to keep them feeling animal-like. And there's a lot of talk about the specific use of color and high contrast, and how you use that, or how they use that, to help make up for, things that lizards might lack, like facial expressions. Anyway, it's a fun article. The lizard people, I have a soft spot for them. They're super fun, and it was a really interesting sneak peek behind what goes into this artwork. Along with some brilliant artwork, these slan are just, I don't even know what to say. They're like Salvador Dali inspired, although the Raptidon is also quite cool. And it looks like Age of Sigmar is seeing an introduction of 4 new Harbinger models. We've got the Grimhold Exile, who is a crazy dwarf. What are they? Durden. They are fun looking. The Harbinger of Decay looks really, really cool with the way the horse is laid out. All of the themes of decay and rot and everything in the model. And of course, these are all beautifully painted, as always. They also have the Marrow Scroll Herald, whose scrolls are just bones, and the Rabble Rouser, who is a very cute little Gloomspite Gits dude. And a little fluff from Age of Sigmar. There's correspondence from the front line by the Dawnbringer Crusade, in which you watch somebody fall to the madness of worshipping the wheel. Then we jump over into a new Warcry article that introduces 2 new factions. We've got the Questor Soulsworn and the Royal Beast Flayers, which are cannibals, and their fluff is really fun. They sort of live in this complete hallucination of them being champions for a cause and on a righteous crusade. And so the reality is they're wandering around with these busted, decayed weapons, but they end up being imbued with all these powers because they're so caught up in this belief and in this fervor of them being on this grand, royal, proper crusade that it kind of imbues these weapons that would normally not have any value or efficiency with more power, and that they are actually scary. So it's kind of a fun, like, they're living in this total matrix, this completely different reality, but they actually are very effective. And some additional Gnarlwood terrain rules, which these terrain pieces look really cool. This ziggurat here is neat. But enough of that, it's time to hit the Grimdark and head over to the 40k side of this. We jump into an update on the Tale of 4 Warlords, which is where you follow these folks within the GW world who are painting up their armies and completing these different challenges. For August, there is a challenge to complete a combat patrol box, and each of the 4 participants talk about their experience and what they painted. Of which we've got James Ashby painting the World Eaters, we've got Joe Neighbor painting the Leagues of Votan, we've got Ruardi James painting the Death Guard, and my favorite, because I'm totally biased, is Andy Barlow painting the Astra Militarum. And he actually did a fun thing where he talked about kit bashing a wheeled chimera instead of a tracked one, and how he did that. And as the cover might suggest, there is a faction focus on the Tau Septs this month. It talks about establishing your own septs if you want to do that. Then there's examples of several different septs. And these faction focuses are always great because you can get amazing inspiration based on the painting styles that are used. And each of the images actually shows a list of the paints used, so that if you are interested in copying that, you can do so. Plus, it gives a little blurb on why that paint scheme was picked and what that represents. So even if that's not something you specifically want to copy, it may help to inspire you for your own sept that you want to make. Then there's a short article in here discussing the development of Terminator armor and all of the ridiculous, amazing, and wondrous things that Terminators are capable of doing. So the next article was a new thing to me. I did not know about this as a maybe troop type within the Space Marines. It's an article called Born of War, and it talks about the Space Marine inducti. So apparently during the Grand Crusade and the Civil War that was happening within the Imperium, there was a lot of concern about being able to make Space Marines at any sort of viable rate. Like, they were taking too long to make. There was just too much effort that went into all those organ transplants and all of the changes and the psychoengineering that all had to go into place. So there became a bit of an arms race on how to make a Space Marine, but quicker. And apparently that was successful to some degree. There were maybe ethical and then less ethical methods for getting there, but in the end they were able to successfully make Space Marines that were known as the inducti. Now apparently on the surface they resembled the strength and structure of a Space Marine, but they are somehow lesser, and they do seem to be treated as such, as the following pages then show examples of units that would be the inducti, but being less personalized. There isn't really the same iconography and reverence that you would have to a full-blown, properly created Space Marine. Now, I'd never heard of the inducti before. It's probably me, but I don't know. If you have, can you drop a comment on where you heard about them? This was the first I had heard, and I don't know if that only applies to like 30K. Is that just a Horus Heresy thing? That's what the article seems to imply, but would any of the inducti have ever moved into proper 40K? Alright, moving on, there is the exciting conclusion to the Blood Bowl League, where apparently they took 25 teams and some 77 games of Blood Bowl to get down to the final champion, and it was a fun ride. And finally, one of my favorite articles is a Black Library segment. It's a new story. This one is taking place in the proper 40K universe, in which we are following Ultramarines in a battle against the Great Devourer, which of course is going to be Tyranids. And in reading the article, all I can say is Mr. Rabute Gilliman has his work cut out for him in trying to bring reason back to humanity. And that is it for issue 491 of White Dwarf. I don't know if you've already read through it. If you have a favorite part, definitely let me know in the comments. I am curious about the inducti thing, so definitely love your thoughts on that. Do you ever use the faction-focused stuff? Like, would this help you in making a Tau Sept, for example? I mean, it seems like the iconography in here always seems really helpful, or at least inspiring, especially the actual army examples. And then it's always fun to see some Warhammer Underworlds getting love. I have a soft spot for that game. I don't know. So make sure to let me know what your favorite part of the article was. Let me know in the comments, and like the video if you haven't already. And with that, we will see you guys next time.